Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at PTB World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important stories. The first is in reference to the current economic situations of the country and, of course, something that the country has been dealing with for quite some time now. We know that this is one of the top issues for the newly elected government as well, who is trying to bring in tax reforms in the country, something, of course, that previous governments have also tried to, however, unsuccessfully. But this is something, of course, that needs the attention, especially given the current economic times of the country, and whether or not the newly elected government will be successful in this matter is, of course, something that remains to be seen. However, we do know that bringing in the traders into the tax net is something that has been tried previously and is being done so again by this government too, with a new registration scheme that has been announced that is going to be in effect from the 1st of April, and something that is going to be monitored by the SIFC to ensure that starting off with 6 cities, the traders and retailers within these 6 cities are able to register, and if not, then this will be done so on a compulsory basis. And this is, of course, something that has been tried previously as well by a door-to-door policy as well. However, we have seen that there have been many ways in which the traders have not been able to be part of the tax net, and unfortunately, this has put a lot of pressure on the salaried class that has paid so much more tax, and of course also deals with inflation. And so we're going to be taking a look at exactly how this policy is going to work and what is going to be the mechanism involved, and why this particular one has more chances of success than previous ones, and what exactly will be needed to be kept in mind in order to ensure that it does not fall through in any way. And so we're going to be able to see exactly what sort of aspects need to be taken into account and what sort of measures are going to ensure that this is something that indeed is successful. This is going to be our focus in the first segment of the show today, and our next one is going to focus on, of course, Pakistan's fight against terrorism and, of course, the dealings with the Afghan Taliban. Again, a place where we've seen previously as well and most recently too that safe havens were provided to terrorists, and of course Pakistani soil was also something that was targeted from within Afghanistan. We have now also known that there is an audio that surfaced with regards to a leader of the Afghan Taliban who has talked about how the war against America is not over, and this is something that they will continue to do so. Also talking about how they're going to be fully implementing Islamic principles and Sharia laws, according to them, which are going to be part of whatever system that they want to enforce within Afghanistan as well. And this also included talks with regards to women's rights and aspects of stone pelting and flogging, which is, of course, something that the leader has talked about is going to be part of the system that they want to make sure it exists in Afghanistan. Adding, of course, other aspects with regards to the US, in which these measures are going to be taken into account, and how there's going to be a war against democracy and their own system is going to be something that they're going to fight for. So we're going to try and take a look at what this particular message means, why it's coming right now, and what will this entail, especially with regards to the system within Afghanistan as well, the way that the Afghan Taliban regime is going to continue, what it means for relations with Pakistan and counterterrorism activities, and then, of course, in the larger context of the US and the world. So we're going to be looking at that in our next segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal. We've been joined online for our first segment regarding the economy by Dr. Khaqan Najeeb, a senior economist, and Dr. Nasir Iqbal, also a senior economist. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of the discussion, and welcome to the debate once again. Dr. Khaqan, I'll start with you with reference to this new scheme that has been announced. Of course, bringing in traders into the tax net is something that is not new, at least in terms of efforts. What exactly do you see, especially with regards to this registration scheme, and what aspects of it do you think point towards a change or any sort of new measure, if any, with regards to ensuring that we indeed do bring them within the tax net?
Hi, Sana. Hey, everyone. So, Sana, if I start with something, if you read the Memorandum of Economic and Financial Policies that Pakistan last signed with the IMF for the current standby arrangement and completion of the second review. So I'm reading exactly so that everyone knows that this is something we promised with the fund some time ago, actually. Section 8 of the MEFP, subclause B, reads the following. It says that expand our tax base. In January 2024, which is past, we plan to launch a scheme for door-to-door campaign in four provincial capitals and Islamabad to register non-filing retailers and streamline their tax filing. By cross-referencing tax filings with electricity meter data, we detect evasion and conduct audits when required, and then it goes on to explain the scheme. So, number one, we have been thinking about this not just now, but for some time, in the sense that we, as
Yes, continue, Dr. Khaqan. Unfortunately, I'm unable to hear you. Can you hear me? We've run into a problem with Dr. Khaqan, but I'll come back to you, Dr. Khaqan. But Dr. Nasir, why don't you take ahead and take a look at this from your perspective?
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on this very, very important topic, especially with reference to, as Dr. Najeeb mentioned, that we committed with the IMF that we should go for reforms, especially in the taxation system and the FBR and the tax collection and tax rate. So all are the agenda items that should be considered and should be reforms to really put and to really collect taxes. So let me give some insight what is going on, as you questioned that whether this time this drive to enroll these traders would help to actually increase the tax collection, or it would be the same situation that we were facing earlier. So to me, it's like a very good initiative in terms of enrolling all the traders and especially the retailer to make them, to ensure them they should be part of TaxNet. But what are the real challenges? What are the real bottlenecks that really hinder this entire process? So we have to actually understand the first, how the FBR work, what is the tax collection system, what is the confidence of common people on all these type of activities. So when we talk about the reforms, and especially reforms within FBR and also taxation system, so the reforms should be in a such way that they create a confidence and also give and boost to economic activities. Unfortunately, the way that we make a sequences of all these type of reforms may not be productive. Let me make it very clear that may not be productive in a sense that they might create instability within that system and give a wrong signal to a businessman, look, that we are catching you and we are behind you, and it will also give a lot of power to tax collector, to inspector, and they exploit common people. So what is the solution? How we can get the benefit of all these reforms? First, we have to understand our entire taxation system. There is an anomaly, there is a discrimination in the tax rate. We excluded so many tax sectors, those should be part of taxation system. For example, agriculture, for example, services in terms of doctor, lawyers. Why they are not part of taxation system? Why we are still excluding them? So this would be the easiest part, and we committed with IMF that we should go for this, and we ignore all the key element of taxation system until unless we give a complete reform package to taxation system and we create a human interface free mechanism where there is no interaction by the human, just to
Right.
make sure that the people have the confidence on this entire system. That confidence basically ultimately have a two advantage. One, they will induce and make sure the confidence to the businessman, they start putting their economic activities that ultimately lead to the economic growth. Two, it will help to ultimately increase the tax collection.
Right, absolutely. And these are important factors that you've just pointed out, and I'll come back to that human-free interaction as well. But Faisal, before that, the aspects that have been highlighted also point towards a possible backlash that could exist, or a way that this can be taken negatively. And of course, there's a lot of other measures that we'll discuss in detail with regards to what is part of this entire scheme and how we're going to move ahead. But when we talk about the way that the traders and retailers are going to look at it, why is it that this is something that needs to be dealt with very sensitively when this is something that should have been part of our system for so long?
Yeah, Sana, obviously when we talk about the traders and retailers, the taxation over them, I mean in past it took place as well. There were many other schemes that were started to obviously attract retailers and traders to get in the tax net, and of course in that way they were given some sort of relaxations as well in certain other areas of their trade and retail sectors. But when it comes to bringing any policy, of course there is a drawback of deterrence that is created in terms that if we go through our traders and retailers, majority of them especially in the urbans, not in the urban but the rural sectors of Pakistan, then of course they are not aware of the rules and regulations and how the tax system works. And so at a larger scale you have to have a mechanism that actually makes them aware of the rules and regulations of why it is necessary for them to be taxed. And of course in our villages, if we look at the retailers and all of these shops, I mean none of them has no idea why tax is necessary and why it is being paid. And even over there you can't have a set amount for especially in the retail sector, they don't have a mechanism that can actually force them to have same sort of pricing of this products which is going on in the urban sector. So that is why we always see that there is a huge difference between if you are shopping something from urban areas and in the rural areas, it's entirely different. That is why I think in modern times, of course in a country like Pakistan, at a larger scale we have to have systems installed, as Dr. Nasir has rightly pointed out, and he has raised a very good point in which of course he has said that the machines and mechanisms should be involved rather than human beings. Reason being, if machines are involved, of course people would be having more trust on that. But of course there is another aspect which I was looking at, that once we go ahead with this policy of taxing traders and retailers and go door to door, of course it would have another impact, and that impact would be related to inflation. I mean they would be considering that the tax they are going to give, that tax shouldn't be coming out of their own pockets, but of course the people once again would be suffering because they would be shifting that tax on the people directly, and it would obviously increase the inflation rates as well. So eventually what I see, as I was going through earlier the tax nets, salaried people, I mean we all three of us, we are considered as salaried people, we have paid 217 billion rupees in tax, and that is the the enormous amount which the salaried class is getting taxed. But
Thank
when
you.
it comes to retailers,
Thank you. For a second I thought that you alone have paid that much.
no. The retailers, I mean retailers has paid 11.2 billion, but when it comes to traders, I mean ironically the traders almost nothing. I mean they have paid nothing. And of course retailers and traders, these two sectors, they need to be taxed, but at the same time the mechanism should ensure that that tax is actually coming out of their own profits, rather than they keep on putting that tax once again on the salaried class, because me and you too, we are the people who actually go to shops and shop something. So eventually, I mean, I would not be thinking about getting more taxed,
Of course,
just because they want to give their own
the
taxes.
Republic has it so much worse as well.
So I think mechanism should ensure that there isn't extra burden once more on the salaried class.
Right, absolutely, and you're right with regards to the mechanism, and Farrukh, I'd like your perspective on that as well. But add to that, when we talk about the shoulds, this is something that has been said previously as well many times, and of course it's been attempted to that this needs to be part of the tax net. But why is it that it has been so difficult to do, and why is it that this time we're going to succeed? Because at the end of the day, with the way that the current economic situation is going, this is obviously something that is absolutely needed. And of course, as Dr. Khaqan also started with reference to the IMF, is something that is required to do by us. But I want to understand, if it has been so difficult to do in the past, aren't we also not still dealing with all of those difficulties? And so what will make us address those difficulties? The SIFC?
Right, Sana, thank you very much. I think that you cut to the chase and you haven't actually made any bones about the matter in question. So my compliments. Regarding the tragic history of failing to levy this tax, let me actually begin by General Musharraf's time when I was a rookie journalist working for then again PTV. And I remember that at that time General Musharraf had actually very kindly announced a voluntary scheme of registration. It fell through. Despite that man being so powerful that he could actually rewrite the constitution as empowered by the Supreme Court of Pakistan, even then that was not possible for him to impose this. Then scene changes, People's Party's government comes in, and then we know Hafiz Sheikh became their finance minister. And Hafiz Sheikh Saab actually tried to go for reformed GST. Reformed GST is an indirect tax, but it is on the basis of VAT formula, right? Value addition of taxes, so that wherever value is being added and money is being made in any product, you actually tax at that level. Because of MQM and because of Julia Bazar, that was also torpedoed, and in the end Hafiz Sheikh had to lose his post. Similarly, repeatedly in PMLN's time, they have tried, or the finance ministers have tried, and then these lobbies actually step in and they torpedo whatever is there. So my humble submission, my concern is essentially about inability of the state to enforce its writ when it comes to this sector. There are two problems here. One are retailers and wholesalers, right? They are unionized. They have their very strong associations, and those associations are also linked with hard right religious groups. So whenever they are under pressure, some religious group also stands up. For example, take the example of your own Para in Islamabad. The moment something of this sort happens, Jamaat-e-Islami or TLP or somebody else would find some way to actually fight the state, and these people would immediately line up to support them. And this has been happening repeatedly, and that becomes a problem. So I really want to see something to change, but I don't know whether that will be that easy. But one thing that Faisal was mentioning, and that is, again, it is as old as my memory of Pakistani policies, the promise to go for automation. Through a software, through automation, and through linking accounts or expenditure of people who are spending more than they disclose their earning, or then you don't have any record, the government of Pakistan can actually crack down on the people who might be tax evaders or tax defaulters. So that again, machines or automation can actually get you the answers. It cannot send anybody to actually freeze your accounts or to crack down. So you have to have some kind of enforcement arm as well. Now finally, given that you have just mentioned SIFC, I think that this time army has learnt a lot. It is not the same army that was there during General Musharraf's time. It is battle hardened, it understands the troublemakers that are there. And if it wants, and if the state wants, if the LEAs want, they can enforce the writ of state by collecting the taxes. But collecting the taxes is not the bigger deal, Sana, here. The bigger deal is the government of Pakistan does not have any visibility as to who is earning how much in this sector. So documentation becomes of prime concern here, and you have to actually ensure that people somehow become part of this system. The only problem is, if you have seen that until up to a tax bracket, most people are going to only pay 1,200 rupees per annum. That is not a big ask. But because these people are afraid that if today they are going to pay taxes, tomorrow they will be further squeezed. So they keep on actually thwarting that, but then they actually keep on lecturing us on the importance of national interest and loyalty to the country. So actually decide on which team you are. You are on the lawbreakers team, or you are on the team of the state of Pakistan. In the absence of enforcement of these changes, Sana, what happens? There are only two ways to levy further taxes, because you have to actually earn something, and flows have to be increased. One is indirect taxes, that is GST, and as Faisal pointed out, then the end consumer actually ends up paying for that, right? The other one is you and us, right? The poor us, who have to actually further be squeezed. And I think that in the end, this is how things go. But there is another positive aspect as well. The government has also asked for the LSMs, large-scale manufacturers, to pay up a super tax, 10% super tax. Now, the biggest problem last time that idea was floated or introduced was these LSMs went to Supreme Court of Pakistan. And from there, because the honorable justices that were involved, astoundingly, they knocked it down to 4%, and that becomes a problem. Then you have to sensitize the honorable justices as well, that this is a matter of survival of the state. They also function for the state. My salary, your salary, their salary also comes from the same kitty that has to be actually properly provided through that. The hath hola rakho. Please don't actually knock down such efforts by the government, because the LSM has been making money and repeatedly expanding its profits over the past many years. So why can't they actually contribute to the well-being of the state, while the poor man on the street is further and further squeezed by three sides? One, taxes, second, indirect and direct, the second, inflation, and third one, of course, insecurity.
Right, but Farrukh, why would the government's efforts be shot down? In what scenario would that work?
Well, that they went to the again this argument that these are engines of growth, and if you are actually going to ask them to set aside 10% of their profit once in a blue moon, then it might actually eat up their revenue streams and their ability to grow further. So that is how they actually make the argument in the courts. And somehow, because usually our courts are not that much, with due respect, I don't mean any disrespect, but I think the courts are ill-equipped to handle the economic matters. Because of that, in the end, we end up with this kind of verdicts.
Okay. Okay. Dr. Nasir, I'd like your perspective on that as well, especially in terms of how will then, in this scenario, given the kind of lobbying, given the kind of power dynamics that exist, and the kind of positioning that unions have had in the past as well and continue to do so, will the government then be able to succeed in ensuring this registration scheme and bringing them in the tax net, and whether or not you think that the monitoring aspect by the SIFC will contribute in this? That's one question. The other one, also add your perspective in the way that this is going to be calculated, particularly in terms of how different retailers and traders will be taxed. There has been a number of measures given as part of this scheme. Do you think that they make sense and that they will ensure fair tax distribution?
Yeah, thank you. I think Pitafi nicely summarized the political economy of our taxation system and how the lobbies work, how the different power sector would get benefit from this taxation system. So what we at PIDE believe that there could be a narrative, there should be a phrase that taxes for growth. So if we believe that taxes for growth, then we should have to think for the solution that ultimately promote growth rather than creating a hurdle in business activity. So what kind of solution we are proposing? Then I'll come back to the second question, that how the retailer could be engaged in this entire process. So what are the solutions that we are advocating over the last couple of years in terms of a tax that could contribute to the growth? First, the simplification. As Pitafi also mentioned, that we have to use the technology. We have to leverage on technology to make sure that everyone can easily understand the mechanism and should be have an easy process to submit whatever the tax part that they have. So the first component should be the simplification. Even I can't submit my income tax return. It would be very difficult. How can the
Very
other
difficult.
people could do? So the second component, the tax rate rationalization. For example, as Rafi mentioned, GST is very high, it's destructive. Salaried person are highly taxed. So we also exempted so many sector from the taxation. What's the use of this with the holding taxation system? That means we are outsourcing the task that should be performed by the FBR to the end user, that you should collect tax on the behalf of FBR. Then why there is a distinction between the filer and non-filer? What's the benefit we are getting from this whole exercise? So these are the anomalies that I feel that should be abolished, and there should be a fair taxation system that give an equal opportunity to all segment of the society to contribute. Once they have the confidence on the system, ultimately, and with the fair rate, like if we are working on the tax reform proposal that subsequently we will present to the government in the next couple of months before next budget, because if we reduce the tax rate, how we can increase the overall volume of the tax, and we are coming with the proposal where we substantially recommending to reduce tax rate, to abolish the anomalies, and also make it simplified, that ultimately enhance the overall taxation system. Now coming to the second component, whether this time there is any different, I don't think there is any different in terms of approaching this entire registration process. You feel like after like couple of months, after 3 months, after 6 months, you will end up with the same type of a result. The, the reason, because we are not following the natural sequencing of the reforms. First, if we think about the system, once system is perfectly work, then people ultimately start having a trust on the system. Once they have the trust on the system, they automatically start registering and paying the taxes. Currently, they don't have trust. They feel once we registered, the tax department would be behind us. They will basically exploit
Right,
us.
but
They
but
will
but Dr.
do
Nasir,
all kinds of
isn't
practice
trust
to.
building a lengthy exercise? Do we have time for that?
And is it
No, no,
not a
it's
two,
not a
Dr.
lengthy.
Saab,
We should
is it
have
not a two-way street? Is it
the
not a
vigilant.
two-way street?
Sorry, I couldn't get your point.
I was saying, is trust not a two-way street, sir? It has to be earned on both sides.
Yes, of course, it's like on the both side. But what are the solutions? The technology could be the one solution, and also on the expenditure side, we didn't actually rationalize our expenditure where the common people feel that our taxes are used productively. Currently, where we are using our tax, either to finance pension bill, either to make a debt services payment, either to support protocols, either to support the lavish life of the bureaucrat. These type of the expenditure that we have from the taxation. So the why then I pay more taxes to finance these type of activities. So we should have to work on the both side, not only from the user side where they are actually already paying so many taxes in the name of we are paying GST very high, we are paying taxes on the bills like electricity bill and so many other stuff. We are paying each and every transaction is taxed. So why we call we are the low paying taxes? We are not a tax cheater. That is the common phrase that is floated in the upper side, that we are the tax cheater, we need to make a documentation. So we are not tax cheater, we are paying taxes, but our taxes are not utilized in the proper way. So that is a wastage of resources until unless we make sure that the both sides would work on the right direction. There is the gap between the both side, and on the user side that they have to pay the taxes, and on the government side where they are collecting the tax. So the both sides should come together. They should realize that what would be the way forward, and give a confidence to common people that look, we are collecting this much money from you, and we will
Right.
invest this for your welfare, not for
Absolutely,
our
Dr.
own.
Nasir, and we agree with you in principle. Of course, that is something that both sides should be doing, and we really hope that was the situation. But the world is not ideal, and I wonder your take on the existing circumstances that we're in right now, and the kind of timelines and the situation that we're currently looking at. This is, of course, effective from the 1st of April. We're looking, I think, about mid-July when we'll be able to collect the first tax, and so this is something that is being implemented right now. I want to understand what are the possibilities that exist now, both for traders and the government and the SIFC, for ensuring that this does actually work. And if not, even if we have the forced registrations going forward, what will be the outcome of that, and what are we going to do if it's not successful?
And Dr. Saab, could you also add to this, because you actually brought up a very interesting argument regarding use of the taxed amount, the money that is collected. This actually goes to another very important thing, that is democracy and how people choose to vote. But will you be able to sell this argument in front of America's IRS, or for that matter, VAT levying authorities in UK, if you are a wholesaler or you are a shopkeeper, that until you actually don't set your priorities right, I'm not going to pay the taxes?
My argument would be, maybe you agree or disagree with that, we should first have to remove this phrase that we are the tax cheater and we are avoiding tax. We as a nation are paying taxes.
So
the
you and
coming
I
to
are.
how we can
Consumers are.
make sure that
So
this time.
consumers are, salaried people are, and we don't have any choice in the matter. But when it comes to shopkeepers or realtors, they are not paying.
Like more than 30% is tax deducted from at the source, so I can't say anything on that. And after
There's no
that, I have,
choice.
it means if I have to pay 18% GST on the remaining income, it means the 50% of my income goes in shape of taxes. So where is this tax going on? So how we can this time make something different? So there are solutions, like globally there are practices as Pitafi used word reform GST, that is basically a renaming of VAT. So we should go for that type of arrangement if we're really looking for some sort of, it will serve two purposes. One, it will help to make sure that it will be the tax on the value addition, so there will be a fair taxation system. The second, it will help to make sure to identify the complete value chain from where the product is coming in and where there is a major value addition within the value chain. The third, it will help to make sure to document the entire process. So that could be the one solution. And the like the short-term solution, how we can convince the trader. Look, to convince the trader, we have to give them a surety that this policy would hold for next like 5 to 10 years. The issue with us, after every quarter, we come up with a mini budget, we come up some sort of SROs where we change the tax rate, either on the name of enhancing the tax collection, either on the name of that we have to increase the tax net. So these are the two issues, and we come up after 3 months with the new taxation system. So then there is no confidence. And then the last component that we should really focus on, how we can use the technology to give like a common people that look, this is the technology. When I can submit my bill, pay my bill using my mobile, then how can I easily pay my taxes through my mobile? And so many other things, like my CNSA is registered, my even everything is registered. When then there is no concept of tax cheating. So why we are pushing so many tax collector and something like that? behind, and they are getting so many rents in the name of clearing those taxes and things like that. So though it is difficult, and the another component, the political will. Do we have will this time? You know that the concept of this SIFC is a forced will, but I don't think there is any system that work in the long run with the forced mechanism.
Yeah.
So
Right.
if
Dr.
we
Nasir,
have the, and
Dr.
currently,
Nasir,
yes,
Dr. Nasir, there is an example I wanted to share here about UK. I know that the businesses out there, of course, people are so happy who have the businesses. Reason being, you might have heard about the tax returns. I mean, when they buy something made in Britain, they are the product is promoted so much that if a company or if a trader is actually buying made in Britain, then they actually give them the tax back, the tax they have paid on that product. They return their taxes at the end of the tax year. Reason being that they are promoting that people with the money, people who got the money, who are earning the money from the trader sector, they actually spend the same money in the country so that it circulates in the economy. So should we coming up with that kind of policies in which we promote buying made in Pakistan so that the other sectors of our economy, they can flourish, and people who are earning from Pakistan, they actually spend in Pakistan rather than going elsewhere and spending elsewhere, taking dollars from here and spending in the other countries. So shouldn't be coming up with these kind of policies in which people are actually promoted to have their own businesses. They become sort of entrepreneur so that they have money. When they have money, they spend in the same country.
Clever idea. I'm adding more to your full plate.
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yes,
think on
Dr.
the light
Nasir.
side, you like us to use always Mehran and the Q mobile. So that's what you are trying to.
Not even
but
mobile.
Dr.
Go
Nasir,
on.
Dr. Nasir, when there will be more buyer, who knows? VWs and all of these, they come to Pakistan and they actually put their own units here so that they can create their own cars, because they know that there are people in Pakistan who are earning from Pakistan, and if they spend in Pakistan, they will be having a sort of lesser tax.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea, if we extract the idea behind this entire narrative is to promote businesses,
Yeah.
is to promote local economic activities.
Yeah.
The entire tax incentive system should be like that. They should promote economic activities. That's what we already mentioned. So we should give incentive to those economic activities. Those have the potential. If they are the producing locally, they should compete and they should produce as per the need. And those have the potential to export. Especially I'm talking about the export because we also need to expand our export. We have to identify and give incentive to those exporters, those
Right.
export and also create like a earning for us. And essentially, so we are all with this type of phenomena that we should promote our local
Absolutely.
businesses and economic
Absolutely. Thank
activity.
you very much, Dr. Nasir Iqbal. That's all that we have time for, but thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insight with us regarding the economic situation of the country and, of course, what needs to be done. And we really hope that this time around this registration scheme becomes successful. We're going to also talk a little bit about what is going on with regards to the region, especially in terms of what is happening in Afghanistan and what the Afghan Taliban has just recently pointed out in an announcement with reference to what they're saying is a war with America that isn't over yet, and of course ensuring some sort of system that they want to put in place that according to them is aligned with Islamic principles and values. And Faisal, I'd like your take on this first with reference to what we've discussed previously, also in terms of the commitments by the Afghan Taliban, what has been going on with reference to terrorist havens in Afghanistan, then now this particular message that has been given. What do you make of it? Why has this been put out?
Yeah, Sana, this is astonishing for me as well, because you might have listened to me in recent 2 years. I have been always advocating that these Talibans, they are not Taliban 1.0, they are 2.0. They might be having different ideas on the basis, because I thought that the commitments they made in the Doha Accord, of course, they said that they will be giving, women rights, and they will be giving, education, equal education rights for both male and female. And of course, they said at that time that they will not be allowing their land to be used against any of the neighboring countries. We remember that. But now, I mean, their supreme leader, Akhundzada, Mullah Akhundzada, when he's coming up with this kind of audio in which he is saying that they will be repeating the same things which they have been obviously doing back in 90s. So to me, it feels as if the idea of 2.0 Taliban is no more, is the same 1.0 Taliban, number one, and number two.
Zero matters more.
Yeah, number two, and most importantly, the accord they made and the accord they signed at that time, they are actually going against that accord, which actually is a sort of, taking all of us back to the square one, where we have been obviously, advocating this, that the Taliban need to change themselves. I mean, here we are, they haven't changed themselves. They are coming up with the same kind of ideas of punishment, ideas of how to treat women, and ideas of, different sectors, that how they are going to run the country. And at the same time, knowing the facts that they have the provinces, 4 provinces now, where there is a clear activity going on of course, promoting terrorism. And of course, there are hideouts of the terrorists. ISIS Khorasan is there, then TTP, IMU, ETIM. All of these banned outfits, they are living there lavishly, and of course, training themselves against any of the neighboring countries, or who knows that in coming future we have the examples of past, right, in which, of course, when something was taking place in Europe, any terrorist activities, they were people who were involved from within Afghanistan at that time as well. So this is something to be pondered upon by the Western countries as well. I mean, if this is the sort of way Taliban 2.0 is going to behave, then of course in coming future I am seeing that there will be not only problems for neighboring countries including Pakistan, but of course elsewhere the Western countries as well. So they need to think about it.
Right, absolutely. But I want to know, Farrukh, how much of a shift this really is in terms of what the Afghan Taliban regime has been saying or doing previously, especially since the US troop withdrawal, and what they're saying now, and also what it points towards in terms of actual course that things can take, with somebody saying that the war with America is not over, that they'll continue to do so. They've done it 20 years ago, they'll do it 20 more years ago. What does this really mean on ground? Will this be ignored? Will the way that the kind of system that they're pointing out, will that be something that the US will allow to happen, since this is something that they've dealt with for so long and finally gotten a way out? Will they take a risk of coming back in?
Right, Sana, first of all, I have to actually remark at the tone of surprise that Raja Faisal was just putting out, because I mean, come on, I am one of the most consistent people on this matter, and I was sitting next to you whenever you were talking about 2.0, actively contradicting what you were saying. So I mean, if you have to you have to put in effort to actually understand that, then I don't know what exactly has to be done. But I'm not the one to actually overlook the nuances of the matter, Sana. First of all, we don't know when this tape was made, because it was put out yesterday and then it was eventually deleted, perhaps because there was fear of this kind of reaction that we are actually pointing to, or you were pointing to essentially in your question. And then remember, in Russia, something has happened. In Russia, there was an attack on innocent citizens, and then ISIS-K actually took responsibility. ISKP is the only franchise of the body which is still alive and kicking, and they actually operate from within Afghanistan. So we don't know whether this tape was essentially made at the time of takeover, because it is essentially after takeover, but whether it was made then or it was made recently. But the message is very clear. One, essentially, as you pointed out, America is only one thing that is at their receiving end.
Yeah.
The second thing is democracy, or the idea of democracy. He actually says that we defeated democracy in Afghanistan and we are going to implement our code of belief all over the world on this earth if we can do it, because we have the commitment. And the third one is the anger towards women. But he then actually goes ahead and says that we are going to start stoning women from tomorrow in public places, right? With that kind of a situation, you can understand that there hasn't been any update in their software. Why would that be? They have been fighting. The biggest problem with any of these movements is that essentially you have to realize that Islam and its jurisprudence essentially came with the Prophet, with Quran, Sunnah, right? Or Uswa Hasna for that matter. And then there was ijtihad.
Yeah.
The ijtihad that actually, or interpretation of faith, the last time it took place was 1000 years ago, when there was no concept of nation states. So a Treaty of Westphalia had not actually taken place. It was at a time when there were no cars, no aeroplanes, nothing of the sort, right? Slavery was still rampant at that time. Because of that, that ijtihad, because it stopped, a lot of clerics haven't moved on. But these guys actually essentially even totally demolished that interpretation of faith, and they want to go back to 1400 years ago.
Right.
That was correct for their time. But now you have to, because Islam has given you the idea of ijtihad, you have to move on and you have to face the realities of today.
Right.
These people don't believe that. That's why they treat democracy as an enemy, women as enemies. So because of that, they can't ever update their software. And this is our biggest mistake. You were talking about America punishing them. The problem with withdrawal was that Afghanistan is at a humongous fault line between Russia, China and Western order. Do you think that once you have actually withdrawn, you can go back? Because other countries are going to immediately get insecure.
Absolutely. Thank you, Farrukh, and thank you, Faisal, for joining us. That's all that we have from the debate. We'll now see you tomorrow.